to the main page as well. There we go. Now we're live. Yay!
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So
I need to click comments, don't I? As you know, we're so good with tech.
Can you see the comments or no?
I guess there's none yet. So
I was gonna say, if you click the button, then you should be good.
I did click the button, Laura. Yeah. I've had some practice now. I've done this a few
Not
times.
your first pony show now, Andy.
No, should be like a seasoned podcaster really by now. Yeah. So I was just saying, your chat yesterday was really good. I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Although I'm about 12 hours behind you as usual, really. But then obviously that's not bad for you because nobody can keep up, can they?
You know, I had only been conscious for about 30 minutes before that, and then I got home 15 minutes before. I went to sleep immediately upon getting home. I literally got home at midnight and fell asleep at 10 minutes before then, and then woke up 30 minutes before the podcast. So I didn't really get a chance to prepare or anything. I just ramble, and these guys are used to it, aren't you guys? Good morning, everyone.
Welcome, Michelle. Good choice. So Jane and I have come away basically because we had such a mad 2 weeks with the in-person course and then the Olympia event, whereby I spent 4 days with Lara, Stacey, Elise, etc. So being tired probably is an understatement. So we've run away to a quiet, peaceful caravan in the middle of a field with birds around and not very much else.
So you mean your idea of a vacation isn't going to London and seeing the sights? No?
Not be eaten by everything that you can't see. No, it's not ideal, really. Well, my idea of going to London these days is get in and get out fast.
I can see why Chen was like, when you asked Chen if I should move to London, and Chen was like, oh, no, you don't. No. I can see why now.
Yeah, not a good idea, really. No, and you notice I couldn't get out of London either because I tried to come home on 2 nights. The first night, the motorway was closed because of an accident, so I got halfway back and then turned around and went back and checked back into the hotel again. So I was obviously supposed to be kept there for some reason.
Well, it was interesting that, you know, the hotel that you had chosen was actually full of politicians that night, that you got dragged back to London.
Yeah, it was bizarre because obviously I'd left the Novotel in Hammersmith and it was fine. And then by the time I got back, the whole hotel was surrounded by police cars, tactical units. I assumed there was something going on actually because there were literally police everywhere. And of course I drove up to the car park to park and 2 guys jumped out with machine guns and basically said, where are you going? And I said, well, the car park, because I'm going to check into the hotel. At which point they wanted to look at the car, look at this, look at that, ask questions. So it was kind of odd. Well, I knew that obviously there was something happening, didn't really realise exactly what was happening. And then, of course, when I did check in, my room was right down the far end of the corridor, right next to the conference room, well, that last room. So that obviously had some sort of connection to why we were being put.
I was going to say, did Chen chase any Lizzies that night?
Probably quite busy, I expect. I had a 5 nights sleep though, actually. I wasn't expecting to get any sleep given what was going on. But actually, it was fine.
Well, maybe you were astral projecting. You just don't remember. Maybe you
I could have been. I could have just been asleep.
It's never a dull moment, though, especially when you're working out of an old building like the Olympia. For those of you who don't know, the Olympia was built in 1886. So an old Victorian era. Yeah, it's an old building, which probably explains why we cleared 647 earthbounds from it.
Well, I didn't realize it was that old, actually, I have to say.
I bet you a lot of those earthbounds had been there quite a while.
Yeah, must have been, actually. Well, that was the funny thing, wasn't it? Because when we were talking on day 1 and 2 and 3, and you were very keen to clear the whole place every day, Chen kept saying, no, we'll wait until the end, which I thought, okay, I didn't know why he'd said that, but obviously there was a reason behind it. And then when he sort of explained, well, if we start to clear it now, we're all going to be attacked every 2 minutes for the whole rest of the next 2 or 3 days, which isn't going to be pleasant, really. So we'll just leave things alone without poking the bear too much, and then we'll give the bear a bit of a poke at the end. So to speak.
I can tell Jane is writing something. She sounds like she's writing with fervor.
Sorry.
She is. She's busy talking away.
Sorry.
Hi, Jane.
Hello. Sorry, I'll stop.
Jane's tucked away behind me.
Her talking is louder than Andy's talking. We need to get you to pipe up, Andy.
Yeah, of course I'm on my laptop, aren't I? I was at home. I've got my decent mic and all that sort of stuff.
It's all right, love. Nice to see you.
Hey, Stacey's on, Candy's on, which is good.
Yeah, the gang's all here. Nice to see you guys. Welcome.
It's the gang.
Nice to see you guys join us. So yeah, it was a very eventful time. It was quite funny though. We we needed to stand out a little bit. It was quite a quiet event for the first day, wasn't it?
The first day was peaceful, basically. Yeah, we didn't have that many people come, I guess, did we? Because it doesn't. Spirit Leads Academy doesn't really give away what it's doing, what the kind of core mission and stuff is. And when there's so many other stands that have got a lot of interesting things to look at, you can imagine that you would walk past our one really without probably paying too much attention. And I guess that's what we saw on the first day. On the Friday, it was a really quiet day because we couldn't really engage people very easily. And obviously, there were quite a lot of us on the other side of the stand. And I think Stacey kind of called it as well. She said, if I stand on the other side, then people think I'm talking to you. Then people come up and ask questions. But when there's no one at the front and we're all stood there like kind of, salespeople, basically, no one was very keen to obviously have that conversation to start with.
Yeah. I think it was just we were a bit vague, people didn't really understand what we were even offering. And when you have 200 other stands that are filled with a lot of other, bells and whistles and people jumping around, it does kind of make it a little hard to put your focus onto what each person is delivering, And I do think it's kind of funny too, because when we came in, we did see other people offering those spiritual cleansings, and we thought, oh, great, there's going to be other people that are here doing what we do. We can collaborate or something. And then it turns out that they were not what they were presenting themselves to be, which I find very funny.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? When you go to these things, your assumption is basically that everybody that's there is there in a spiritual capacity, and therefore the kind of remit is that they're doing good things, and the kind of general vibe is positive and high and that kind of stuff. And I sort of thought, I think I said to you guys at one point, I think Stacey said, we could do with a massage. And I said to her, don't get one here, because like all of these people aren't clearing each other. There's no protection. You're going to jump on a massage couch that another 250 people have been on before you with a person performing massage that isn't clearing anything. They're probably moving entities from each other. And of course, our view of the world is so different to most people that we're looking at it in a very different way. And that was what I thought. I thought I could have done the massage by day 3 because we've been stood up for hours and hours and we were all pretty tired. But I thought there's no way that, I want anyone here touching me, basically, because clearly you don't know what's with them. And the fact most of them don't do protection. And that conversation came up time after time when we spoke to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it really interesting. Where's that picture you sent me? Because that one group, I was telling these guys yesterday, that one group of people that were with the Jesus people, as I'm just calling them, even though they're really not Jesus people, they were channeling. As I walked by, I saw them channeling, and it was kind of like that televangelist channeling, if you know what I mean, where they're just kind of like, shaking people's hands and giving them the intense energy. But when I walked by, I just did not feel good. And then you guys, you really helped me put that together when you explained what was standing next to them. They were not channeling Jesus, they were channeling entities.
I mean, that was the thing, wasn't it? When we walked up there, I mean, I and you have both walked past there quite a few times during the 4 days, really. And every time I walked past, I didn't really have a proper sort of psychic look, but I could feel it didn't feel particularly good. And obviously, they're dragging people in. There's queues of people having, healing or whatever they call it. Spiritual cleansing, I think was their word. And I used to walk past laughing to myself, thinking you're not going to get cleansed at all, actually. You're going to get attachments given to you by these people. But, we're not there to do that. We're there to obviously shop window SRA. So obviously we're not in any capacity going to be kind of talking about our stuff against their work, because they're doing what they think they're doing. And most of those people that work for them probably don't realize what they are doing. But it was only that last day when you and I stood there, and then these 3 ETs basically appeared right in front of us.
The picture you sent me, this is pretty close to accurate as to what Andy saw when he was looking at those people.
Yeah, it was like a white translucent face with red eyes, but there was skin across the front of the mouth, which that picture hasn't really got. But I mean, and they didn't do anything, didn't say anything, just stared at us. And we were just stood there. If you remember, you took the brochure and she said, this is where we work from, and showed this picture of a church or something that we laughed at and said, we could probably clear that. So,
well, I'm sure there's more of them back at their HQ, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's bound to be like a whole group of them, isn't there, that work with the people that think they're doing spiritual clearing. But this is the problem, isn't it? The actual people don't realize what they're working with. They think they're channeling Jesus, don't they? So they think they're doing something really good and beneficial. It's just unfortunate that what they're actually working with is something that's masquerading to be good, and it isn't. And this is obviously what we kind of see all the time, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a lot of beings masquerading as something else, and this is something that was very. It got me emotional yesterday to see how many imposter soul guides were at the event.
Yeah.
There were nearly 50 imposter people that were practitioners there that had imposter soul guides. For the event.
Well, I wasn't expecting that. Me
neither.
Because obviously you and I were telepathically linked, because I was actually having a shower basically at the time. I was talking to Chen, and then the thought came into my mind, what are the numbers? Because I'd forgotten to ask him. I know you'd said I need to tell me what the numbers are, and then you obviously messaged me more or less like 5 minutes later or something. So
go on, I need the numbers, Danny. Give me stats.
Yeah. So obviously you're thinking I want the numbers, and I'm suddenly getting the message and asking Chen. So when he gave me that, I was a little bit shocked, because I wasn't expecting them to be clearing practitioners who had masquerading spirit guides or soul guides, because that is, that's never really come up before. Not for me anyway, particularly.
Well, can you explain a little bit about imposter soul guides for those who may not be aware that we can actually be tricked and have our soul?
That is, we ask them 3 times, are you from the highest light? And you expect to get yes, yes, yes. And then as part of that, or certainly on the spiritual courses I teach generally, we basically teach to use like a sort of second level of authentication, whereby the guide shows you 2 pictures or 2 images that you've previously agreed on. So when I connect to Chen, I get the yes, 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 you from the highest light, and then he'll show me 2 pictures, and as long as those pictures are the ones I expect to see, that's my kind of 2-factor authentication to know that I'm talking to Chen. And of course the fact he's generally rude when we first start talking, so I have a bit of a laugh, and the energy, who you're talking to from the energy connection. So for me,
like chatting with an old friend,
it's like you and I talking, when we talk we have a laugh and stuff, and I know it's you. But if we connected and I just heard your voice but didn't sound like you and didn't act like you, then I would kind of know, oh, it's probably not Lara. And this is what imposters do. Imposters guides or imposter spirit try to break the connection, or they try to interject into the connection before the medium makes it with the guide, and they can impose in that way, and then the guide will stand back because it won't try and connect to the medium. And then of course if the medium isn't checking, it'll hear voices, obviously talk telepathically to this now imposter that pretends to be something different, i.e. your guide, or pretend to be Archangel Michael or Mary Magdalene. They always use the same things. This is for me what kind of gives it away, is that these imposter guides never try and be something normal. They're always going to be some amazing deity that the medium would love to speak to. So it kind of strokes the ego from that perspective, really, because obviously if you're talking to a spirit guide and they say, oh yeah, I'm Fred, the kind of road sweeper, the medium's going to think, oh, just Fred, the road sweeper. But if they say, oh yeah,
is Archangel, Uriel or something.
Yeah. I'm Gabriel. How are you? It's like, oh wow, I'm talking to Gabriel. Fantastic. How are you? What are you doing? So they always kind of basically stroke the ego with some amazing deity that, in general, we're not talking to that deity at all. You're talking to some sort of imposter that's pretending to be it. And then, of course, the longer you speak to it and the more often you speak to that imposter, the stronger that connection becomes, which makes it more difficult for the original guide to get the connection back. And this, I think, is what Chen did at the Olympia. Obviously, they went round and found a lot of practitioners that had imposter guides, but the medium wouldn't have realised they were talking to something that wasn't the key guide they thought they were talking to, and obviously broke that connection and then cleared and removed that energy and that spiritual entity from the space, so that when the mediums next connect to their guide the next day, I guess, they're going to be connecting back to their original guide, not the imposters that have been there for quite a long time. And the numbers were big. I can't remember exactly what the number was now. It was like 49 or 50 or something.
It was 49 false soul guides, imposters that we removed,
Yeah, so 49 practitioners of what we do are connecting to something and hearing something that isn't what they think. And that's big numbers. And then if you times that by the number of people going through Olympia over 4 days, which was like 20-odd thousand apparently, or something huge, if you can imagine each one of those practitioners is talking to or connecting with hundreds and hundreds of people, getting, providing information from guides that aren't actually the real ones. There's a lot of deceit going on there, really, behind the scenes.
Right. And so it's not really that the original soul guides step aside, it's that the person gets tricked and chooses to push their own soul guides out of the way, really. It's because there's probably a lesson in it or something that the soul guides originally say, okay, all right, well, you figure it out. I'll be here when you need me, kind of situation.
Yeah, and they tend to step back. And that's the thing. You'd think the soul guide would actually kind of fight to get back into that position. But of course, when the medium is happily telepathically talking to something, then that connection's been made, basically. So it's like you've knocked on a different door, someone else has opened the door, you've walked through the door and started talking to a different house in a street. So your spirit guide's in the red door and you've gone through the green door and you're talking to whoever's in there that's pretending to be your guide. And of course, that can carry on for years for some people. And I've known of mediums that have had imposter guides for years. And of course, the imposter guides are clever because they don't give the game away immediately. They pretend to be good to start with and do good things. And then they just start to basically, change the lesson and kind of change the conversation and it becomes more negative over time. So you're dealing with intelligent energies that aren't stupid by any means, really. Hey, I've just seen Jono's join the chat.
Yes, Lord Webster's here. Hello.
Lord Webster. I need to get him a t-shirt that says Lord.
Nice to see you, bud. So yeah, I can only imagine what many of those practitioners have been seeing with these changes. When you take in a false soul guide, usually it kind of tends to shift your perception. It takes you down a different path than what you probably would have traveled had you not had this experience. So, I mean, there's a lesson in everything.
Yeah, exactly. I've done it myself. I think I'd be surprised.
Chen didn't tell you that one time, did he? He was waiting for you to figure it out, didn't he?
Probably. But I mean, I think any medium would actually put their hands on their heart and tell you truthfully that they have at some point connected to something that wasn't, the guide that they thought they were talking to, because it's part of the lesson. And you can't learn the lesson until you do it. So you can't become proficient and good at what we do unless you make mistakes. It's part of the journey and part of the path, really. And of course, a lot of it is ego, because imposter soul guides will stroke ego immediately. So the mediums become very.
They even give you power. They give you even abilities. Yeah. You think, wow, my abilities are gone through the roof, and it's like, well, yeah, they're giving you a boost, but for what purpose?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And I know obviously we saw what we termed as a bit of theatrics, didn't we? At Olympia, we saw some people doing things and jumping around and all sorts of kind of stuff that were quite theatrical, whereas we just stand there and go, you're clear, you're clear, you're clear, which isn't particularly good from a client perspective because they don't really get to see anything, and therefore they wonder if we've actually done anything. But obviously we had people coming up with problems that we talked to Chen, can you clear them? He'd say, yeah, it's done. We'd go, it's done, go for a wander, get a coffee, come back in half an hour and tell us how you feel. So our method of doing things is very kind of non-theatrical, I guess, compared to some of the other things.
Funny thing, and I noticed the difference because I was telling everybody about Ferris yesterday and about how Ferris was doing this drumming and making it, you know what I mean? Like people come over and they believe they've been cleared because he was doing this whole big thing for 20 minutes. But when somebody came up to us and they're like, all right, Andy, can you clear me? And you're like, yep, done. They're like, what? you're the one. What do you mean? What? When? What? Huh? Like she didn't know what to think because you were just like done. Chen's on it.
Well, yeah.
Chen's on it right now, and she's like, "Where? Huh? I don't see anything." Like she didn't believe she was cleared.
No, but that's the thing, is it? But then they walk off for half an hour, get a coffee, come back, and then they tell you they feel better. So you think, yeah, so it has worked. It's just that our method isn't particularly, it's not particularly theatrical, and therefore there's nothing to see because there is nothing to see because the guides are doing it. So our way of doing it is real because it's really happening. It's just that for the human being, there's nothing to see. Because I think you said to me, next time let's get some chairs and get people sat in, 5 chairs in front, and we'll tell them the guides are working on them and they've got to sit there for 20 minutes, and then they'll believe something's happening. And therefore, obviously, it will happen anyway because it is happening. Just that their perception is that something really did happen. Rather than we just go, yeah, it's done. And they look at you as though you're performed some type of magic, which we haven't. We've just said to Chen and his team, can you clear them? Yeah, it's done. So, it's kind of
You got to do the bippity boppity boo, or otherwise.
Maybe we need to work on that, Lara, with a Ghostbuster spray or something.
I was gonna say we could just blast them with sage bubbles and be like, the cleansing's right there. There you go.
Yeah, we'll need to think about it, I guess, because that was something. I mean, obviously we'll have a chat with Jono because Jono's opinions will be different to what we did.
We just need fairy wands and be like, boop, like you're done.
Yeah. Well, we need some sort of chamber they can stand in, don't we? Like an organite. We could have like an organite chamber or something on those.
That would be cool, actually. I love that. That would be cool.
Stand in that
stand on the organite platform.
Yeah, but then this is the whole thing, isn't it? Really about what we're doing, because it is authentic and it's done in the right way with integrity. Then there isn't any theatrics. There's nothing to see, and that's kind of that's what we're all kind of attracted to, isn't it? That it actually works. Well, what we're not attracted to is some theatrical event and a show, because we don't really do shows particularly, because we've probably done that in a past life and got fed up with the dog and pony show thing.
Really? No, I don't want to do that anymore.
So yeah, I don't know about dancing and rituals for 4 hours, whatever it is, 8 hours, 4 days straight.
Let's just get some really big bubble guns and blast them with a wall of bubbles, and then be like, go through the bubbles and be like, now you're done. We'll just give them a big thing of bubbles up and down and say that's all it takes. Love bubbles.
Yeah. But we have got about 300 litres of bubble mixture, to be fair.
We do. We have enough for the next 3 or 4 events at least.
Yeah.
I gotta love it. But yeah, it really does. Belief is everything. And if people don't really believe that they're cleared, then it doesn't help the situation, because that part of the belief is in your security. It's like, if you don't think you're going to heal, then you don't. It's one of those situations.
I mean, that was the thing, wasn't it? The people that we did that to didn't think anything had happened. So their belief was nothing happened because we didn't touch them. We didn't do anything at all. And like that guy that turned up with a thing around his neck so he couldn't move his head. He'd been to see people. He had scans, MRIs, all sorts of things, I think he said. But basically nothing had worked. But we didn't even touch him. He just walked in and then he walked off. And then he came back smiling half an hour later. Like, I can move my neck. So even though he didn't really believe anything was going to work, it obviously did. So, so the belief, is nice to have, I guess, but it's certainly not the be-all and end-all, really.
I got to tell you, though, that thing, the apparatus they put on me that day.
Yeah. Well, it was quite big and rusty as well.
Was it? It was the big rusty one.
It was like a big rusty old thing.
Oh, that makes it even worse.
You didn't even get a new galvanized modern one, basically.
Maybe they put the old one back on me, the one I had in a past life.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, they put, oh my God, of course I'm forgetting what it is called now. It's a skull bridle. That's right. A skull bridle on me in the Astral. And that, I've never bitten my tongue so hard in my entire life. I'm always talking, Andy, and I never ever bite my tongue while I'm talking. But for some reason, I did it 4 times in the course of about 30 minutes, to the point where I could hardly even speak. Like, it was agonizing just to open my mouth. And sure enough, I say something to Andy, and Andy's like, "Oh, I had a big contraption on my head with like a steel poking, what do you call it, tongue depressor." And you could feel it. Like, literally, I could feel the release when you removed it off of me.
Yeah, it did look quite funny. I thought about leaving it on you for a bit, actually. For like 6 months or something. Can you imagine that? 6 months of no talking.
But that's the thing. Like, it's crazy how many people may be affected by stuff like this in the Astral, and they have no idea it's there.
Yeah, well, that is the whole thing, isn't it? Well, I mean, we did a little walk around the venue, didn't we? And looked and saw a few things that we were being shown from a kind of spiritual perspective. But you can imagine all of the people that are going through with the things that are on them. It's the numbers are probably huge, and certainly like the earthbounds. You think of how many earthbounds were with people, or people that came in without earthbounds that went with them, probably, because everyone that had healing from the the Jesus guys and all the other people, if they weren't doing protection and clearing each person between, they'd be just transmitting things like a virus from one to another. And that's kind of what is the scary thing, isn't it? Is that you go to a spiritual show and go home with more than you expected to, really.
You go to a place like that looking for healing and spiritual awakening, and you come home with some mouthless mofo trying to get in your way.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And, well, that's the thing, isn't it? We're all stood there, aren't we, making sure that we're in our bubbles, we're protected. We were still being attacked occasionally, weren't we, while we were doing things because, well, you more than most, because obviously you speak more than most, but...
That second night in the hotel, I'm telling you, next time I'm going to be like, Chen, can you please clear our entire hotel? Because let me tell you, every time we tried to like rest in that hotel room, we felt funny. And then the next morning I would wake up, I was wrapped up like a mummy in my sheets. Stacy was laughing at me. She's like, what happened to you? She's like, because she heard me like arguing in my sleep. And then I'm wrapped up like a mummy. Like I couldn't move the next morning. And that was the morning that stupid headpiece was placed on me.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, they know when we're going to be doing something that they don't like. So they're like, all right, let me throw some monkey wrenches in those plans.
Yeah. I mean, first thing I did when I got to my hotel was get out my bag and got all my little pebbles and stuff there. So there's a pebble by the door, the window, it was like a quadrant made, and, visualize a pentagram on the door to stop stuff coming in. So I kind of like set the room up before I actually, spend any time in it effectively, because you don't know how many millions of other people have been in that room before and what they've been doing in the room, because you could have had like some occult satanic group in the room before doing stuff, and then you go and lie on the bed. So, you need to clear this stuff, don't you, really?
Uh-huh. Well, they don't realize how stubborn I am. There's a reason I'm a Taurus born in the year of the ox. I don't give up lightly. They piss me off, and I'm like, oh, I've got this. Like, I'm coming back with a vengeance. Oh, buddy. Oh, we got a spammer. Hold on. Got to get the ban hammer. Cow. Bye-bye. Oh, no, hold on. I'm trying to delete it now. Stupid thing. Sorry. Distraction. See what I mean, Eddie? They're always popping up.
You talk about distraction and it appears, basically.
Yep. So it's good to know. This is a wonderful first experience, I think, because we went there with the hope of finding more mediums and to introduce more people to this. But there was a lot of people that came up to us to have wonderful conversations, and I feel like it was very serendipitous. Like there was even a guy that was sent.
They came to you, Laura, didn't they? They just pushed me out of the way and made their way to you, basically. That's what actually happened. Everyone would say, oh, you're Andy. I go, yeah. And they go, where's Laura? And they'd like...
And he's just offended because he was out front and somebody walks up to him and was like, Andy, it's you. Where's Laura? I came to see Laura. And he's like...
There was more than one person did that. I said, yeah, she's over there. You'll probably hear her, basically, before you see her.
Hear me laughing my ass off, blasting people with sage bubbles as they went by. That was so much fun, I must say.
Yeah,
the kids loved it too.
It was good, and I think Elise and Stacey obviously enjoyed the frivolities, because obviously it was supposed. The general concept of that was supposed to have been like a sort of formal event, really. I mean, Terry would have literally turned in his grave if he was watching. In fact, he did tell me actually afterwards how successful it had been, but he did say that it would never have happened if he was running the show, because he would have never allowed us to go down that route, really. So when you suggested disappearing off to the costume shop to get some Ghostbusters outfits, and then I kind of got
costume shop is really haunted, by the way. Like, we had to go down into the bowels of the basement to find those Ghostbusters costumes. Like, it was a task and a half, let me tell you, but it was meant to be, clearly.
It was, yeah, it was a good laugh. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? For me, really, I know John and I still haven't really properly covered it. We do need to talk about it, but blending fun with the whole Ghostbuster concept did actually open the door to all the conversations that we otherwise probably wouldn't have had with people. So, yeah. So Laura can take the credit for that, because it was your idea.
You know what's funny is I suggested that weeks ago. I was like, we should just dress up in Ghostbusting costumes. Everybody thought I was joking. I didn't think I was serious. No,
I think I was the one that said, what a stupid idea, along the lines of, probably. But yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Ollie's appeared as well. Hi, Ollie.
People even stopped me on the street. It was so funny. They were just like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to Ghostbust the Olympia.
Literally. And Rhea's there. Hi, Rhea.
But being old Victorian buildings, some of those Earthbounds must have been there a really long time. Like, imagine how much we raised the vibe of that whole building.
Yeah, it's true, actually. That is true. All right, well, so what was it before? Did you know?
It was an old exhibition hall. Has been since 1886.
No, so it wasn't like a train station, because it's right by the train line, isn't it? So I did wonder.
Well, that's why it's by the train line. They've always had it as kind of like a show place.
Yeah, right, okay.
So yeah, I bet you there's been some probably even since the 1800s that are still
lingering. Okay. So probably the war thing as well, the Second World War. There have been a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
Of course.
the Blitz too probably didn't help. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Wow, how exciting! Well, any chance we could get the other dimensional perspective as to what might have happened when what we couldn't see?
We can do that. I'm sure that's the part you're actually looking forward to, really. Which is good.
I didn't want to push, but of course, any excuse to chat with my favorite person in the Astral.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'm just going to take my watch off. Always got to take the watch off.
Why doesn't he like watches? That was something I was talking about with Ollie. Right, Ollie? We were wondering, because Ollie's always got a watch on. Why doesn't Chen like watches?
I don't know. It's a good question. But it always says watch off. So watch is off.
I get the chance to ask him. It's going to be my first question.
You can ask him. That's the thing, actually, because when he says these things, I don't actually ask him why. I just think, oh, it's just his thing that he wants to watch off, because there's always something basically to talk about. So I tend to just do it rather than continually ask, what the reasons are.
Mm-hmm. Good to know.
Cool. Okay. So I'll
see you on the flip side, Andy.
Yes. Cool. Good day, my dear.
Hello, Chen. How are you?
I am marvelous, thank you. And how are you yourself?
I'm fantastic whenever I get to talk with you. I've missed you. How's everything been?
You can't have missed me, my dear, because we spent so much time together over the last 4 days.
And what did you think? How did it go? From your perspective.
We had a marvelous time, of course, because there's so much work to do. And of course, the whole point from our perspective was from a spiritual perspective, we were there obviously to showcase the work that we do, and education is the key thing. So we were there to educate people, to have conversations, and we wanted to show people really that all of you are real, because of course these days you can never tell what's real anymore and what's not. And with the progressive aspects of AI and computer technology, soon it will become very difficult to know if the people that you see on the screen or on your PCs are real people, or whether they are either holographic projections of something else, or whether they're just AI constructs. So we wanted to have yourselves and Andrew and obviously young Jono to turn up to actually present as real human beings that laugh and joke and do all of the things that you humans do.
Well, we do try to mix in some work with our pleasure,
Yes, and of course this is what happened, my dear. If you remember, on the first day, the energy was very low around the whole stand. The general atmosphere of the building was very low. The vibration was exceedingly low from our perspective. So we set to work on day one to start to change the vibration. We were closing portals underground, and on the underground aspects of the Olympia, there were lots of portals that were bringing through other entities into the space. So they were being closed basically on the first day that you were working. And this is why you found that on the second day, suddenly when you turned up in the morning, the vibration seemed to have lifted dramatically. And then, of course, the frivolity started.
Interesting, because I did notice a difference the first day. It did feel kind of lower, denser, more. I just thought it was boring, but I can understand why that would make it boring, is the fact that everything just kind of drab,
Yes, well, the energy was dead from our perspective. There was no high vibration. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if you like, if we looked at it simplistically, then the vibration was on a 2, what we would say, on the first day that you set up. And this is why, of course, people are affected by vibration. So the people in the surrounding stands that you were conversing and talking with also probably came across as though they were very low energy, very tired, very fatigued. I don't know if you noticed, but that was the general feeling of the whole place before it actually opened, and then people started to enter.
Yes, I did notice that. Interesting.
Yes. So this is the thing.
So just closing those portals, that made an effect on the building itself. But what did we actually do? Did we help to raise the vibration of the space too?
Yes, of course, because you brought in laughter. And as we know, laughter is a high vibration. So this concept of dressing up in costumes and running about with plastic guns and spraying people with bubbles, although it may seem quite trivial from that perspective, had a huge change on the energy and the vibration of the whole place. Because, of course, the same as if you drop one drop of coloured water into a sea of water changes every molecule in that water. So you can imagine, while you're all running around chasing all of the children children are squealing and laughing and running to their parents and having fun. And then the parents are having laughter, and people laughing at you because you're being so silly, or what appears to be silly, is actually a very clever method to change the vibration, because adding the sage to the bubble mixture meant that every time you sprayed the gun, that high vibration and that protective energy was basically percolated around all of the atmosphere in the whole building. So if you could see what we saw from our perspective, from an astral perspective, when you started to do that, you could see effectively a huge mist start to rise and clear the space from your stand in all directions, because of course there is wind currents blowing through that place, because doors are opening, there are windows that are open as well in the toilet. So there are air currents and air pockets moving around, and your clearing vibration and the high vibration of laughter started to actually bring the vibration up. And this is why I'm sure if you spoke to most people that ran a stand around you, they all started to feel so much happier by the end of the second day.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm laughing because I was literally trying to get the bubbles up into the air currents. I saw the air currents and I'm like, get it, get it. I kept blasting it to try and get it to spread further. So intuitively, I must have known what I was doing.
Yes, yes. And of course, it was fun because when people hear laughter, they're generally drawn to laughter. So if you can imagine the huge numbers of people walking into that particular space, and most of it is just normal hustle and bustle, and then you hear this raucous laughter happening, you're going to be drawn to the raucous laughter to find out why people are laughing. And of course, that was what started to happen. And that's why the numbers started to go up exponentially of people that were drawn to you and wanted to talk to you, because they could hear the vibration and the energy of fun and laughter. And there were no other stands that had fun and laughter.
No, I did notice that. In fact, people were coming over and telling us we had the most fun stand at the whole event. What a compliment.
Yes, because of course you had big personalities on that stand. And of course those personalities let themselves go. And of course I did chuckle to myself when Andrew was told that he would be getting inside the costume, even though he did try to push back slightly. And then I think someone said there were 4 or 5 people around and he would be climbing in by his own choice, or he would be forcibly put inside the costume, at which point he gave in. And from our perspective, we were roaring with laughter.
Oh, that makes it even better, Chen. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, but then of course, once you actually put these costumes on, what happens is your perception changes. So rather than being a very formal personality, your personality changes to the costume you apply. So if you put a costume on like Ghostbusters and you start to run around laughing and joking, then of course the personality starts to change to align with the costume that you have on. And this is what happens when you watch films. This is what happens when you watch horror films and things. If you're in a fearful state and you're seeing fearful things happening, then you go into that vibration. So the same thing, if you put a costume on that makes you look a complete fool, which I think we could agree those costumes probably did, and they certainly weren't the most fitted of costumes either.
No, it was a 3XL. I felt like I was drowning in it, but it really made it so much funnier, I think.
Yes, and that of course what was funny is the fact that you were happy to laugh at yourself, and people that are happy to laugh at themselves change the vibration of people around them. And this is why we were so keen to encourage that type of behavior, because of course it had a dramatic effect on everyone that entered the space, and of course it changed the vibration of the space too.
How exciting. Wonderful that we can actually kind of hold back the darkness just with smiles and laughter.
Yes, this is why we say laugh every day, because laughter opens the heart chakra, and as your heart chakra opens, your vibration comes up. So if you can imagine a room of people running around with Ghostbusters outfits chasing all of the children would be all squealing and laughing with delight and joy, and the vibration would be enormously high in that space. So maybe we could start to have Ghostbuster parties.
Oh, you're reading my mind, Chen. I would love that.
Yes. Perhaps that's a plan. Obviously, we might need to try to get that by young Jono and Andrew, who probably aren't quite so keen to go down that route. But the general concept is that it works.
Well, we won't be doing it, I think, at psychiatry conventions and things where they're trying to be taken seriously. But when it comes to events like this that are more family oriented, I think it was perfect. And I love the fact that, just watching Andy be silly and watching him have his inner child come out was, I think, the best part of it all.
Yes, basically you unlocked him for the day, or for the few days, I think. It's fair to say. I'm sure Jane was quite surprised when she looked at her Facebook account to see him running around like a child with a Ghostbusters outfit and a gun on, because I'm pretty sure that's not what would have been expected when they were loading the car up in the morning.
To see Andy blush whenever there were old people going by too, he was still blasting them with a gun, and they're looking at him like, who is this man that's blasting me with bubbles? And it was just the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. So I'm really glad that we all kind of came out of our shells for this event.
Yes, and that's what we saw basically from our perception, is that all of you started the event in a very serious manner, because it's serious work, and it is serious work, and the work that we do, is serious on all accounts. But sometimes you need to bring the vibration into a different place, and to try to connect with people that don't understand what we do from an organizational perspective and what happens with spiritual release therapy clearings. Trying to explain that in a conscious way is difficult. But using effectively a pictorial costume and saying we clear ghosts from people, even though it's technically not correct because you're not clearing ghosts, you're clearing energy, vibrations and things, but someone understands what you're talking about. So one sentence of we clear ghosts is much easier than 5 minutes of boring conversation about the seriousness of entities and discarnate spirits and interdimensional parasites, of course.
Exactly how I feel about it too, Chen. Well said. Thank you.
Yes, and obviously from our perspective, one thing we noticed is the children latched on, and the children became very connected to the energy and the vibration. And obviously moving forward, we would be quite keen to help, or to find a way that we could start to educate and train children to understand some very simplistic concepts of how they keep themselves spiritually clear and how they keep their vibration high. Because of course the children are the future.
You've just given me a brilliant idea I'm going to run with, Chen. Thank you.
Yes, good idea. Does it involve bubbles and guns by any chance?
It absolutely will.
Yes.
Wonderful. So I'm just curious, was sage the best option, or was there something else that I could have used that would be even more powerful?
Sage is perfect. Sage is, anything that clears space basically would work. So all of the high vibrating oils, frankincense, those sorts of things, anything that has a high vibration clears space basically. So sage is obviously known to do that, as are a whole raft of other oils. So it wouldn't have really mattered what you picked. Particularly, the clever part was actually mixing it with the bubbles, because this changes the construct. And you probably noticed that, of course, you could smell sage to start with in the room. Even we were smelling sage to a certain degree, and we weren't even.
There's a lot of sage in the area.
There was an awful lot of oil deposited into the carpet, I think.
I'll be amazed if we don't get hit with the cleaning bill, because it was starting to squish by the time we left.
Yes, I think Andrew had a little chuckle to himself at one point and said, what happens when they come along with the high pressure cleaners and they start to clean the carpet and they realize that the foam is 2 foot tall?
That's something I would like to see, but not as much as I would like to see what it was like when you were clearing out the astral of all of these entities that were in the building on the last hour. Could you give us a little insight as to what you might have found then?
Yeah, so if I give you the process that we proceeded with, basically, as I said, on day one, we identified quite a lot of portals that were underneath the building that had been there for a long time. So they were closed immediately to stop energies moving in and out of the space, because, of course, if that continued, then entities would move in and out of the space and connect to people and drain their energy. So that needed to be done as a first starting point. Then the second thing that we did was basically surrounded the building. So we basically created only one entrance and exit. So where people came in and exited from was the same physical doorway that you obviously know. We basically set up a cordon around in the same way the police would do. If you're trying to apprehend a suspect, you create a cordon and you give them one access point, so that everything has to come through the same space. So we did the same. We created a team of universal entities that we work with, of all sorts of different species, if you like, to basically effectively, the way you would visualize it, my dear, is just standing in a line around the building to contain the vibration and the space. And what happened then, of course, a lot of the entities in the building immediately tried to leave, because they realized they were going to be apprehended at some point. So we just basically then cut off the top layer. So we presented a very high vibration, effectively like a net over the top of the building, to stop them leaving in any way. So they couldn't get out from a sideways perspective. They couldn't disappear down portals, and they couldn't alleviate themselves from the top. And then we just waited until that last day. So they were left to have free reign for a day or so, because of course we realized that if we started to clear them, there would effectively be a spiritual war or battleground that would happen immediately, and that wouldn't be good for any of the people that were in there physically. And of course yourselves were the catalyst, so you would have had a lot more problems than you did, and I think you had enough yourself.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few other problems that you probably didn't know you had that were being cleared by our team as well at the same time, because of course we were protecting all of you in that space. So then basically on the last day when you said, can we clear the area? And I said to Andrew, as soon as you leave, we'll basically effectively send the what we call the clear up team in. So basically we have a device, difficult to describe from your perspective, but imagine a box effectively that you put in the middle of the room that has effectively like a casting net of high vibration, and we open that box and it basically sprays this net completely around in all different frequencies of vibration that are low. So every low frequency has effectively this net that's sprayed out that basically sucks and connects to any of the energies or entities that were there, and then we basically pull them back in the same way that you go fishing. You throw a fishing net into the sea, any of the fish in the area are basically apprehended by the net, and then you pull the net in. So we do the same thing with a vibrational frequency device. Does that make sense?
This is literally from Ghostbusters. They do that in the movie. They have this thing, they slide into the room and it opens up with a bright light and all the bad juju gets sucked into it and then it traps shut.
Right, so yes.
Literally like that.
They're very similar concepts then, of course. But then, of course, I expect the people that wrote the Ghostbusters agenda understand how these things work from a frequency. Everything is frequency, of course. So it would have to be a frequency-based device to do that type of thing.
Wow. I'm blown away.
So once we'd removed the entities from the room, then obviously we were basically monitoring practitioners as they left. So as they left the exit, if they had a guide or a connection to a guide that was masquerading, so an imposter guide, we basically disconnected them. We then basically took or apprehended the guide that they were connected to that was a negative guide, and they were cleared and removed from the space from a vibratory perspective. And then as they left the building, another team that we had were reconnecting that physical medium to their proper guide. So the practitioner was linked back to the guide that they thought they would be talking to. So by the time they left the building, they would have been unaware that we've actually cleared and removed any of these imposters that were connected to practitioners, and they were linked back up to their proper spirit guide.
So
and then, of course,
have a massive ripple effect.
Yes, of course, as those practitioners go home and then continue their work, they would be none the wiser, but they would now be working with a wholesome guide in a sovereign state, rather than an imposter guide that's pretending to be what they think. Now, some of those people are going to notice the change. So they'll notice that the actual conversational details with the telepathic link have changed when they speak to that guide, and they may remember and they'll feel the connection is different. And the guides will probably tell them that they have been connected to an imposter for some time, and obviously give them the information. And they need to start being more respectful and double checking the connection with the actual authentic guide.
Wonderful. There's something I'm really curious about, because I'm very surprised just to see the level. There's a very low level of demonic activity. You guys only cleared 14 demons from the area, but there was a lot of extraterrestrials. A lot.
Yeah.
Any
So
idea why that is?
Well, our understanding was the demonic entities obviously had pre-advanced knowledge that we would be there, so they were not in attendance.
Okay, so they knew the clearing was probably coming then.
Yes, whereas the extraterrestrials, obviously they're able to basically manifest through portals, but I guess they probably weren't really expecting that we would close the portals first and trap them in that space. So this is a war, my dear, of course, so there are different ways of playing the game, so to speak, and obviously we have a team that work on strategy, so we have a strategy that we employ before we do these things, and obviously the negative side also has a strategy.
Well, we both have to keep upping our strategy, don't we? Because both sides keep learning.
Yes, of course. And, we do certain things that give away the way that we work. And then, of course, the dark side would adapt to those things. And therefore, we need to change what we do. So this has been going on for eons, of course. So it's not a new game particularly. It's just that the vibration of the planet is ascending now, and we're needing to move that vibration into that higher space. So we need to start moving faster and quicker, which is why we're so keen to work with more and more people, because of course the more practitioners we work with, the faster we can get the vibration up. So it is a strategic decision from our perspective to do that, of course.
Wonderful. And I see you see more of these events happening in the future then, yes?
Well, I have my eye on all sorts of things, to be perfectly honest. Trying to find the people and trying to obviously move the pawns around the chessboard is slightly more difficult because, of course, you all have physical lives and families and those sorts of things to take into account. But, of course, as the Spirit Release Academy grows in its numbers, then we have more pawns to move about the chessboard. So from that perspective, the faster we can get people in, the more change we can evoke. And basically, if you look at your physical human life these days, people that aren't working in a positive way for the increase of the vibration, for the ascension of the planet, aren't really making much change to their physical life, and they're not really changing anything in a positive way from a planetary perspective either.
Well, as we have been made very well aware, things are changing very rapidly right now, aren't they?
Yes, there's a lot happening. There's obviously a lot of I'm sure you're aware, there's lots of X-ray radiation coming into the planet. There's a lot of radioactive changes that are happening around and on the planet. And of course, the dark side is trying to terraform the planet in its way as well. So there are two strategic things happening, sometimes tactical. So we see tactical things happening in different parts of the world. So if you look at the events happening in the Middle East, there's some tactical choices being made by the dark side to create war, to create fear, and to try to hold that vibration down in some of these very influential places. But obviously from our perspective, we're working from a strategic perspective. So it's the long game rather than the short game that we're working towards. And obviously increasing the numbers of people that can do this type of work is part of our strategic choice.
I can feel the changes just happening in certain areas. I can only imagine what the ripple effects are going to do.
Yes, I mean, if you could see the Astral, obviously it was like a battlefield by the time you'd all finished. So yourself and young Stacey and young Elise and Andrew and obviously young Jono, and of course young Oliver too. We must remember young Oliver's part
yes,
of the
Oliver's
part of the game effectively. So he's chosen to be the son of obviously Andrew, and that means that the energy and the energetic vibrations are very similar, and therefore of course he's connected to what happens and his vibrations connected. So him and I need conversations to have.
I can only imagine you hear that, Ollie.
Yes,
you did tell him, you did put yourself into some big britches there. You got to grow into.
Yes, I know young Oliver is not so keen to have some of these conversations, but we will be having them at some point.
I feel like I need to have the same conversation with my little guy. He's also here. It's kind of like we choose our parents, and it's like, well, you did make quite a decision.
Yes, of course. And you wouldn't have made the decision if you weren't able to carry through with the content of the life choice. So people that have been through difficult life choices have chosen those life choices. And obviously there are two paths effectively. You have the physical choices and the physical things that happen to you, the marriages, the divorces, all of the difficult things, the abuse. Everyone is making those choices from a physical perspective, but from a spiritual perspective, everything is vibrationally based. And your vibration basically is harmonized with your emotional state. So if you're living in a very angry, negative emotional state, your vibration will be low, and therefore you won't be working to the spiritual path particularly well, and probably you won't be working to your physical path particularly well. But if you can get through the physical aspects and start to accept the things that have happened to you in your life choices, and then your vibration starts to come up, then you need to group together with people of a similar vibration. They will pull you up. And that's essentially, my dear, what you've done. If you look at that event, your vibration is very high. Andrew's is exceedingly high when he's working in that particular manner because we're connected to him. And at times I was actually coming through. And I do believe he told me no 2 or 3 times, especially when he was talking, because he wasn't keen for us to do any type of demonstration of the way we speak on here. So we were pushed back a couple of times, but we were very close to taking over, as you may have noticed.
We did see your eyebrows starting to form on Andy's face, and we were starting to wonder.
Yes, that was me trying my luck to a certain degree.
Oh, that's so funny.
Because this is the relationship that we have. He is the driver of the train, so to speak, but I am in the carriage behind. And at some point, I'd rather be at the front of the train and rather have him in the carriage behind. So we do have this inaugural competition between us happening.
I'm very curious about something. I've been wondering this for a while. What's up with the watches? You don't like watches. What is that?
No, the watches I find quite irritating because, of course, yes, the watch obviously has crystals inside because it's a conventional watch. It's not a digital watch that's running from a digital perspective with a battery. It has a quartz crystal. And of course, the crystal is vibrating at a frequency, and that changes the frequency of that part of his physicality. And although it doesn't really matter to me particularly, I find it irritating. So I tell him to take off the watch.
Interesting. Okay, good to know.
Because if you think everything is vibration, when you wear, as a woman, you wear 2 crystals in your ears. So there's balance and there's harmony between both crystals. So each crystal is vibrating at a frequency, therefore it synchronizes the frequency of your head and everything's in balance. If you wear only 1 crystal in one ear, then of course you've got a vibration that now is lopsided, which changes the essential frequency of your head and the vibration. And that basically changes the brainwave state inside as well. So people that aren't wearing things that are balanced around the physicality mean that the actual physical body would be out of equilibrium with itself.
I love it. I'm always trying to balance it, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. Cool.
Yes. So all of the people that are listening, that are looking at their ears now and thinking, oh, goodness, I only have one earring in. I think I need to purchase a second one.
Wow. Okay, cool. So he needs 2 watches. Is that what you're saying?
It would still irritate me, my dear, so I'd still tell him to take them both off.
Good to know.
I do get irritated at times, you might have noticed.
That's funny. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm very excited to see how things are going to evolve, Chen.
Yes, well, we're expecting some turbulence, obviously, as I've dictated. I obviously won't speak too much about that, but I think we've said back in the early part of the year that there is turbulence coming, and people need to do some research and just be aware that there will be some turbulence. But of course, like all turbulence, the storm eventually dies down and then the sun comes out and the sea becomes flat.
Well, I'll make sure I put my seatbelt on. Thank you, Chen. I appreciate that. I don't want to get knocked overboard.
No, and that's probably a good idea. And it's a good idea. It's a good idea for everyone to be watching the spiritual and the physical landscape, because of course the two things are connected together. When you see random things happening from a physical perspective in the news and around the world, then there must be a spiritual equivalent happening in a different vibration that you don't see. So if you see a nuclear explosion happen, let's say, in a part of the world, you can imagine that the same thing has happened in the astral in a different frequency. Not a nuclear explosion, but some sort of spiritual battle has happened. And then, of course, you see the physical manifestation of that event.
The Tagetans were saying this. The Pleiadians said that this is what happens, that the news is actually reporting on things that are happening in the astral as if they happened in the physical. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yes, and also, of course, well, the news is also, of course, trying to manifest things. If they want something to happen, they basically broadcast it, and then people's thought process changes to that particular event. And then, of course, that attracts the manifestation behind the scenes. So if you were to look at a lot of the news, or you had a friend that worked in the news, and you actually asked them to look at certain dates that news was broadcast, you'll find that quite often it's broadcast before the event. So if you look at the 9/11 events, I think it's widely known now, some of the broadcasting happened before the event. Before the towers fell down, the broadcast was that the towers had fallen down. I don't know if you're aware, but that...
Oh, I'm well aware.
Yes. So these are sorts of examples of the media and the news being used to basically orchestrate a topical event effectively before it actually happens.
Interesting. Wow. Well, we've got a lot of work cut out for us, but I'm excited for it. I feel like good things are going to come from all of this. And I feel like the rest of us, it is a thing that's going to change the world. You know, even though it may start in one little corner, I think it's going to have ripple effects that change everything.
Yes, there are huge changes coming. This is part of the reason that we're obviously trying to teach spiritual protection. Andrew obviously has his courses that are running, and I know you do yourself. So all of the practitioners that are coming online into the Spirit Release Academy are being brought up to speed with the teachings and the way that we want things done from a spiritual perspective. And obviously we have obviously pendants, pebbles, all those sorts of things, which sound like they're just figments of jewelry, but they're not. They're actual devices that work. They change energy and they protect you. And this is why you, my dear, are starting to come online now, making these sorts of devices, which is good. And we'd like to encourage everyone to start to do their research and go off to their man shed or girl shed and have some fun and start to make things that actually work. And they do change the vibration and they do protect you. So these concepts that we call things pebbles and pendants of power sounds ridiculous. But of course, it's just a fun way to say this actually works. It changes your vibration, and they will come more and more into their own as you start to see the frequency rise. So as the vibration of the planet continues to rise and we start this ascension process, these old tools and the knowledge of which comes from the old days of Lemuria and such like will come online, and you'll start to notice more and more inventions per se, or perceived to be inventions, of using energy to provide protection and to change frequency.
How exciting. Wonderful. Bringing back the old knowledge. This makes me very, very excited. Wonderful. Thank you for everything you're doing for us, Chen. This is a wonderful time to be here. I feel we're very blessed.
Yes, you are blessed, my dear. I think I probably said to you before that all of you that are on this call listening now are here in the human form. You've chosen a human life. 99% of you have had a terrible life. I'm sure if you spoke to each other personally or in private, you would say, yes, I've been through some very troubled times and the water's been quite choppy. But you've earned your place to be here because you're the people that are needed to be here at this time. And your guides stood behind you, working as hard as they possibly can to bring you online and put you in the places they want you to be. That's why most of you are living in the darkest, difficult, negative places. Most of you have no money or no funds on purpose because we want you to be in the worst places. There would be no point whatsoever from our perspective to have all of you living on some island in Barbados, drinking coconut juice and swimming in the nice turquoise sea. It would be no use whatsoever to the planet. So we need you spread out geographically across the world in different places, but connected together in these forums where you have each other and you have a voice.
Ghost busting the trenches. That's what we're here for.
Yes. The way that we see it is like the police lines where they all lock their arms together, they put their shields up and they start walking forwards. And if you work in that manner, the police know this. You can have a big disillusioned group of people that are together, but if a police line starts to walk towards them, that group disperses, because as long as no one breaks the line pushes everything back. And that's effectively what we're doing from the spiritual perspective, is we're locking arms with all of you and your guides behind the scenes, and we're all walking forward.
Wonderful. It's an honor to walk beside you, Chen. Thank you for everything.
Yes, thank you. And you, my dear. And one day, of course, we will meet, not in the flesh, but obviously in the real place, the real vibration.
Yes.
And then, my dear,
I can see the recording of what happened. Yeah, I want to know this. Someday I would love to be able to see myself and, walking around outside while you guys are clearing the space. That would be really nice.
Yes, well, my dear, of course, everything is recorded. This is the beauty of what you do from a spiritual perspective. When you take your last breath and you move back to spirit, the first thing we do is we obviously decompress you, because depending upon the way that you've died, depends upon the trauma that you have been through. But after your decompression, then we show you a video of your life and the things that you've done, the things that you've changed, the good things and the bad things, and then effectively you view yourself. So you will be able to see exactly what happened during that event that we've both been through recently.
Oh, exciting. I'm not in a rush to see it. I can wait.
Yes, more time spent there is more time changing things that need to be changed.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Chen. I look forward to the next event. Let's make it even bigger next time, shall we?
Well, this was a test run to a certain degree. Obviously, we're working on different fronts, but we've certainly got lots of ideas. And I think the idea that we need to form a method to work with children and train the children in a very soft way with soft gloves, but start to get them to understand these principles and techniques is instrumental in our thinking now.
Wonderful. I'm on it, Chen.
Good. I'll hand over to you then, my dear.
Thank you, my friend. I will see you soon.
Okay, I'll say goodbye to everyone, and we will speak again soon.
We will have another chat next week. See you then, Chen. Hello. Good morning.
Just see a blurry screen. But that,
Well, that was a fun
Yeah.
chat, I must
Yeah.
say.
good.
You're gonna have to rewatch it, obviously, because you have no idea what we said. But it was
But,
fun.
that's why life seems to be in reverse most of the time. It's like I'm always catching up on everything that's happening generally.
I think the icing on the cake is Ollie. Ollie gets to be the next Andy, I bet. Watch.
No, I don't think Ollie was keen on that idea, Laura.
Well, he should have chosen a different father, I guess. You know, this is the situation we find ourselves in.
Does that mean I can just hand over and say, right, okay, I'm going to retire. Over to you.
All right, you can have Chen now. Here you go. He's yours.
Yeah, right. I think that Ollie would be off out the door like a shot. Well, he actually had an experience years ago whereby a partner that he was with basically had probably done some drugs and stuff, and effectively she was possessed by stuff that black eyes, all that kind of thing. So of course he's messaging me me and Jane obviously at 3 a.m, and of course phone's turned off and we're asleep. So he had a whole night basically of effectively shitting himself with this partner that was possessed. And since then, he's not been too keen to meet the negative side. And he'll tell you that himself, I'm sure.
He had an explanation and some backup because, with my 2 marriages that went down the toilet, I had both of them, the blackout, the eyes go black. They start acting crazy, trash in the house. And I didn't have any explanation as to what the hell was going on. I had nobody to clear them. So, at least in this situation, there's always some backup that you can call in.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That, because we're creating this network of people all around the world that all live in different time zones, then we know from an SRI perspective, there always is someone that's online that can help you. And as that gets bigger and bigger, then there's more help, which obviously is good.
Yeah. Interesting. I really do feel like this is only the beginning. Like there's going to be a lot more big events that are going to be, cleared out in a positive light.
Yeah, well, this was quite a big event, wasn't it? It was thousands of people there, so it was quite a big one. We didn't start off at some small village hall, did we? Locally, this was like the main London Olympia, basically. So, and obviously, that was the kind of effectively then that would be the starting point for this type of thing.
Yeah.
So that was good. So I need to have a chat with John. We obviously need to come up with a plan of what we want to do, how we want to do things. And
Chen loved the Ghostbusters idea. And what's funny too is that contraption, I forget what it's called. Does anybody remember what it's called? Where they have that thing, they slide into the room after they've caught them, and then it bursts open, the little trap, I think they call it a trap.
You're talking about on Ghostbusters, the film?
Yeah, in the movie where they
that was like 20 years ago, Laura. I can't remember.
I'm going to have to watch it now. Especially Ghostbusters 2, because it's rare that a sequel is actually better than the original, but I think Ghostbusters 2 is even better than the first one.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm talking about the new ones. I'm talking about the ones from the 80s. You
need to find us the clip you're talking of so we can watch it.
Yeah. But there's like this little contraption thing that they shoot into the room when they've got them, in their little gadgets, and then it emits some kind of a light, and then the ghost gets sucked into what is it called? Yeah, this thing. You remember?
No.
You don't remember that?
That looks like a dustpan and brush.
It basically is, but for ghosts.
Maybe that's what they were doing, just sweeping them up, sort of thing.
But in the movie, that's what it does, is it lights up with all those colored lights, and then all the ghosts, it throws out some kind of a light trap, and all of it gets sucked in. That's what they did in the actual Olympia.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I need to have a chat with him, don't I? Well, I'll listen to this, actually. I think.
Watch it.
Because, of course, that's the thing. And I guess a lot of people probably don't realise that we don't cover all this stuff because it's every day and we're on the train and this train is just going down the track so fast. We don't cover all this stuff with him, really. So you often know more than
this shit.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the Soul Guys. We're talking about Hollywood. Like, how do they nail it so perfectly? That's weird.
Well, they've obviously got the other side of the coin to talk to, I guess, haven't they?
Well, you do realize Ghostbusters was written by Dan Aykroyd, and Dan Aykroyd's dad was an occultist.
Really?
Dan Aykroyd is a medium himself. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I'm telling you, that must be where all this is coming from. I wish I could talk to him to be like, hey, This is a little too close. How did that happen?
Well, that is amazing, isn't it, actually? Well, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? We're just like the, I know Chen talks better than he, but we're just like the sort of pieces on a chessboard that he's pushing around, basically, and you kind of just go where you need to go, don't you? But don't know why most of the time.
Yeah.
Hey, did you ask about the watch?
I did.
What was the answer?
Well, what's funny is he was talking about how there's crystals in the watch and there's an unbalance that happens with the energetics when you have the watch in your hand. But, because for example, like if you wear one earring on one side and not the other, you have a crystal on one side and not the other, you're getting lopsided energy.
Oh, that's interesting.
So he was explaining that, it's better to balance it out like I already am because apparently I'm in tune.
So I'm not balanced.
But what's funny is he basically did say it more or less. It just boils down to the fact that he finds it irritating.
Oh, right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that, can you really?
Exactly. I'm like, so you can put 2 watches on? And he's like, no, I would take them both off.
Yeah, well, he's always said it ever since I've channeled him. He's always said, offer the watch. And I always think, well, we can do it anywhere on stage, anywhere you like, we can channel.
And here I was thinking there was some clever reason, like, no, it makes your time go faster, or your life force ticks faster or something, But now it's irritating.
Yeah, right, fair enough. There's lots of things he finds irritating behind the scenes, I can assure you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. He's just the best. So you've made my day, Andy. Thank you very much for this
I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
It's always fun to get a deeper perspective. And now that I know that I actually get to watch it later on when I am in the in-between stages again, I don't have to actually miss it.
Well, that's
it reminds me of that Harry Potter scene where they go back in time and then they get to watch themselves and they have to like avoid themselves in the background where they're trying to change shit. You know what I'm talking about? It's going to be like that, watching it like, oh, look, there we go.
Yeah. Well, it probably is. It probably is like, because we're, obviously we're all connected, aren't we? So we've probably all done this in past lives one way or another. So therefore it's just a repeat of the same thing again, but in a different way, really.
What's your dog's name, by the way? He's really cute.
Oh, of course, you can see Bert, can't you? Bert.
Hi, Bertie.
It's funny because when Chen comes in, he disappears. And as soon as Chen leaves me, he's back, sort of thing. So he knows the difference.
That's funny.
Which is quite funny.
He's like, nope, you're not dad right now. I'll be back.
He's checking that. It's me.
Maybe you can see Chen's eyebrows. We were laughing a little bit how in person when Chen was trying to come through, we could actually see Chen in your face a little bit. And then just now Chen was like, yeah, I was trying to come through, but Andy shot me down.
No, I said to him, no way, it's not the right place, basically. Because that was what we talked about, wasn't it? If we actually were doing a channeling session in a separate room that people have bought tickets for, they know what they're coming to. But if just stood on a stage in the middle of a massive hall and suddenly Chen decides to come through and start talking, it's kind of like, it's not right for the people that aren't really in this world with us.
You got to start promoting it like Bashar does. People are prepared when Bashar comes through. They know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you go to an event that that's going to happen, and that's what I was trying to explain to him, you can't just take over on stage because he'll talk for hours. And there was only a small window of opportunity to talk anyway. So that was never going to work because you have like 40 minutes or something.
Well, we've learned a lot, and apparently so has the other side. We're winging it as we go. It's exciting though. This is fun.
It is quite fun actually, isn't it? Really. I mean, I was chatting to Chen this morning. I said something. Well, I was chatting to Chen, and it's probably him, because he actually said the battleground is in your mind, basically. I thought that's quite cool because I was doing these little Chen posts where I make the little image and put the stuff off, and I thought that's interesting. The battleground's in your mind because effectively you create what you think about and what you see. So trying to get out of fear is the key thing, really, because otherwise you're going to be creating that space in your life, and then you'll bring it into your life as well, which obviously we're not trying to do.
Wonderful. Well, next week we have the Chen Uncensored chat where Chen can sit on Astara, or Chen can share his thoughts, in an uncensored manner.
Yeah, that's when I start to panic, Laura. What's he going to say? Because there are certain things he's been told not to talk about, basically, because obviously the fallout from that is generally quite big. So, but there's obviously most people kind of know his opinions on certain things. So we're that is out there, obviously, in the ether, but we're trying to keep everybody in a positive place.
I feel like Chen and I need to have a private chat sometime soon.
Yeah, we can do that.
I need to have some private words with Chen.
Yeah, we can do that, can't we? Really?
Thank you. Because I've got some ideas that I think he's gonna like, and vice versa.
Are they things that me and Johnny won't like? Is that what you're trying to
No,
say?
no. We just have to get the okay from the Astral first.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not a bad thing, is it? Really?
No,
I think that's the
really,
thing, isn't it? You know, all of the stuff we're doing now, I sort of feel is new, really. Like, you know, we're all teaming up, myself, you, Jono, you know, all of the people in SRA. So it feels like this is a new thing that we're putting together, and it can go off in loads of different directions, and different people can take it in different directions as well. So, you know, just like the group clearing thing that Chen started to do with White Hawk and stuff and opening heart chakras and things, it feels like it's all kind of new to us, really, because I don't see it anywhere else and don't see people doing these sorts of things that he comes up with. So, you know, collectively, we're obviously all forging like a new way of doing things, I guess. And like the clearing, you know, when you walk up to people and go, yeah, you're clear, and they walk off and wonder what's happened and come back smiling, you think that's like a new era of healing and stuff, really. Because we don't have to do a show, we don't have to do entertainment and theatrics. We just go, yeah, the guides are working on you, and it's done, basically.
Yeah.
But obviously, you know, we're all in that space, we're all in that vibration, it's high, so it's not the reality from a normal perspective, but certainly for some of these events, that type of thing is how it could be, really.
One of the people watching earlier has a Chen chat coming up, a private one with you, and she would like to know about like the basics of how you would conduct one of those conversations, what kind of things she can ask, that sort of thing. Any suggestions?
Yeah, it's good actually. I think Jane mentioned it earlier because we'd taken the Chen chats away because obviously from a time perspective we were struggling with time, and John and I were trying to focus on SRA and the in-person course and Olympia and stuff, was just running out of time, really. So we've sort of put them back on the website now. So the way it kind of works, you obviously join a Zoom chat with me, so you get like a 10-minute boring chat with me, basically. And then the general gist is Chen comes in, and like you've just done, they can ask him anything about their personal life, whatever they want to talk about, and he'll answer. And it's just a two-way chat. So there's no frills particularly. It's just a conversation with Chen for sort of 35, 40 minutes. And then I normally come back just to check that everything's okay, and then say, you know, obviously save the recording and stuff, and then send them the sort of video. So in terms of what you can ask anything you like. It's the same as what you just do. We never plan what we're talking about. You never ask me, can I say this and that? We just, everything's on the table, basically. And, you know, as you know, from Chen's perspective, there's nothing he won't talk about. So, which is what starts to concern me sometimes.
Well, that's one of the things I find so refreshing about Chen, because so many of the other soul guides are like, figure it out, go meditate, you know, like they don't want to give you answers. So when you can get a direct response from a soul guide that's like, yeah, this is how it is, I'm laying it out. Like, it is so refreshing. It really is.
And I think there's probably things both ways, because sometimes you do need to figure stuff out yourself because it's your life, isn't it? So, you know, if you got all of the answers, then you probably aren't going to grow spiritually particularly well, because you'll then sidestep problems that would have taught you things. So there is that aspect of it, I guess.
It's frustrating because it's like it's kind of like the vibe of that we have amnesia, right? Like our memory is wiped. We have amnesia. We're trying to remember shit, and rather than doctors being like, "Your name is Bob. You're from blah blah blah. You did this," they're like, the doctors are like, "Yeah, so figure it out. Go meditate. You'll remember."
Well, yeah, and sometimes, you know, it is nice to get the shortcut version of things, isn't it? Of course.
It helps, you know, it gives you a couple standing stones to kind of, you know, move forward a little bit so you can kind of suss things out easier.
And also, I've always said, you know, with Chen, you know, don't take it that Chen's always right about everything, because I've known things he said that haven't been right, or he said things to people that didn't happen that he said would happen, because obviously paths change and stuff. So it's not to put 100% of your kind of everything he says is gospel, because if that was the case, then, you know, it'd be a very different world, wouldn't it?
This is why I like past questions rather than future questions, because if you ask questions about like, what was my role in the Myria, you know, that kind of situation, it's a little bit easier to answer than what is my role going to be in my next incarnation or something, you know?
Yeah. Which again, like if everything changes, and again, depends what vibration you're in, what dimension you're in. If there's lots of copies of Earth in different frequencies, then depends which one of those you're in, and that sort of stuff, I guess. So that is, you know,
the most favorable one. This is what we can hope for.
No, we end up in the worst ones, don't we? Basically. That's why we're here.
I think we're avoiding some of the worst ones with this work. Like there's, a lot, there's variations of every, situation out there. So you're kind of navigating all day long, trying to choose which situation. It's like one of those choose your own adventure books, it's already written, but you can choose which version of the story you want to live out.
Well, that's the thing is, if you look at all the key decisions in your life, every time you make a key decision, then you follow that path for a certain length of time. And then if things work, they work. And if they don't, you come back and then you can't go in a different direction. So, if you look at most of us, we're like men, women having relationships with each other generally, whichever way round. But those relationships take you down a certain path. And then, things do or don't work out. Generally, they don't at certain points. Then, you get the disappointment and the upset and all the negative stuff. And then you've got a choice to do it again the next time you eat someone. You think, right. So when I met Jane, we both had a list like for each other. She's outside, so she'll probably laugh because she's probably listening to this. But when I met her, like literally within the first 10 minutes, we went through my checklist. Like, can you cook? Yes or no? Do you want any more children? Yes or no? Sort of thing. So once I'd sort of ticked all the boxes, and she was asking me similar stuff because she was in a difficult place as well. Once we'd actually got that out of the way, then we thought, okay, let's sit and have a chat because, there was obviously, you'd learned from the lessons that you made before.
Well, it's certainly not getting boring. We've got a lot of excitement happening. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold in the future. Just keep on.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Andy. This was a really fun chat. And thank you very much to Chen as well for sharing his insight, because it's really interesting to know, a little bit about what they were seeing from their perspective.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? We don't really see it from their perspective, do we? We just go, like when we clear somebody and you're connected, you go, okay, they're clear. To us, it's just a you're clear, fill the form in type thing, send the report, but we don't get to see on the Astral what's actually happening.
Well, considering that's what they're seeing in the Astral, maybe that's actually a good thing.
I mean, that is actually more or less what I saw, apart from a big flap across the front, basically. And they just stood there and didn't say a thing. So it was just like, yeah, we can see you, you can see us, but well, and that, I guess that's the thing about not going to battle with it, is it? Because had we tried to clear that and remove them,
I'm sure he cleared some of them because they had their retreat was cut off, Chen said.
Yeah, well, yeah, we would have cleared them after, but when you and I were stood right in front of them.
No, we didn't want to be there for that.
No, that wasn't what we did, really. Which is why we wandered past.
Yep, exactly. Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Andy. I look forward to our chat next week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. All right, Laura, I'll say goodbye.
Awesome. Love you guys. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow morning with Lloyd. We'll do some readings for you guys. Much love. See you soon. Bye everyone.